Hello, I'm Anthony McGowan, and I'm perhaps best known as the author of edgy teen books, such as Hellbent, Henry Tumour, and The Knife That Killed Me. I've also written extensively for younger children, books like Einstein's Underpants and The Donut Diaries. Now, my new book is Leopard Adventure, which is the first in a new series about two cousins, Fraser and Amazon Hunt, who are members of an organisation called Tracker, and they get to travel around the world saving endangered species. So in the first one, they get to go to the Russian Far East, where they're helping to save the Amur leopard, which is the world's rarest big cat. In later adventures, they get to go to the South Pacific to save sea turtles, and to Canada to confront the world's scariest bear, and later on they get to hunt for the world's biggest snake. Chapter 1. A big beast in a bad mood. The giant forest hog was 1/4 of a ton of angry pig that you really wouldn't want to mess with. Two great tusks curved up from its top jaw, and two more jutted out from the bottom. A giant forest hog in a good mood could be a dangerous beast. In a bad mood, it was lethal. Those tusks could open up and empty out a human stomach like a tin of beans. And this giant forest hog was in a very bad mood. Its little piggy eyes were staring short-sightedly at Amazon Hunt. It snorted twice with a noise like a backfiring car, and then it charged. "What on earth am I doing here?" thought Amazon, not for the first time over the past few days. She was a long way from home, and her only chance of survival lay in the hands of her 13-year-old cousin, who, quite frankly, couldn't shoot to save his own life, never mind hers. Well, as a child, I was a nature obsessive. It's what I lived for, and I used to read every single book about the natural world in my local library, and Willard Price was a big part of that. I read all the adventure series between the ages of probably 7 and 9, and they really were part of my mental framework growing up. The great thing about Willard Price was that, as well as writing about it, he actually did it. I mean, he was a genuine explorer and adventurer. He travelled the world writing about politics and the natural world for the National Geographic magazine. He was an expert on South America, on the Amazon, and about the Far East. And so he had a real knowledge about what he was writing about. And he's brilliant at combining those two things. I think that perhaps the greatest thing about Willard Price is the way that he tells a cracking tale, but also it turns out you're learning things at the same time. And that's an almost unique combination. Well, I reread the Willard Price books quite recently, partly to my own children, and in some they still totally stand up as great adventure stories. But particularly in the early ones, there's not a great concern with preserving the environment. He was very much a person of his own time. He began writing these books in the 1950s, and when, for example, he'd look at the Amazon rainforest, he'd think, what a fantastic place to exploit. We'll cut down those trees, we'll extract those minerals. So he essentially looked at the natural world as a resource to be used by humans. Now he was also, he was quite progressive for his time, so he wasn't unusual in this. I think that now the world's moved on slightly, and so in my books there's much more of a focus on preservation. Also in the original books, remember that the two main characters, Hal and Roger Hunt, they're collecting animals for their father's business, who then supplies them onto zoos. So the main impetus for the narratives there is collecting animals, whereas in my books we're preserving animals. Well, I suppose the main link is the characters. The two main characters in the original series, Roger and Hal, they've had children. So Amazon and Fraser are the kids of that generation, and they're still characters in it, Roger and Hal. But also some of the villains from the original series are still there. So any of the parents who are reading these books again might get some pleasure from that. So I've tried to weave in certain connections all the way through. I suppose I wanted to continue the story for various reasons. I mean, partly because I love them so much. They're such great adventure stories. So I wanted to tap into that. Also, there's an anniversary coming up. It's the 125th anniversary of Willard Price's birth. And I think the Willard Price family wanted to continue it as well. And so that they asked me to work with them on this project. So all that kind of came together, and it just felt the right thing to do at the right time. What I really wanted to do was to write almost an old-fashioned kind of adventure story, where almost every chapter ends in a cliffhanger and full of peril and danger, but yet also have a modern consciousness about the environment, about environmental issues. So those two things I wanted to bring together. Well, sadly, I wasn't able to get to the Russian Far East where the story's set, but I have travelled around extensively in Canada, which is a very similar environment to that part of the world. So I got to get a feel for the forests and the tundra there. But most of the research I did was actually in the British Library. I read every single book published in the English language about the Amur leopard and the Amur tiger. So I kind of cram my head full of facts. And I suppose that's part of my background. I've always been quite academic, so I like to learn from books as well as from the actual natural world itself. Perhaps the bit that I most enjoyed writing was a little self-contained story about this killer bear, which is in fact based on a true story set on the Japanese island of Hokkaido, which is just off the coast of the Russian Far East. And it happened about 100 years ago. There was this bear that killed about 12 villagers. And I kind of retold that story, but set it in the Russian Far East. And it's an incredibly tense, dark, gripping, exciting story. So I really enjoyed that part. I think I probably most enjoyed writing about Boris, who's this huge, larger-than-life Russian character who's both comic and also rather sinister. And he has his pet dog, Boris the dog, who's almost a kind of canine version of him. And they were both great fun to write. I can give you more than a hint about it. It's called Shark Adventure, or possibly Tiger Shark Adventure. It's set in Polynesia in the South Pacific, and it's about an attempt by Amazon and Fraser to help some sea turtle eggs. Because what tends to happen with sea turtles is that they lay their eggs in the sand, they hatch out, little baby turtles try and get down to the sea, and about 90% of them are killed before they reach the sea. So Amazon and Fraser, in this one, their mission, if you like, is to help them get down to the sea.